Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, bots and cons, to Tech Talk, the officially unofficial Transformers TCG podcast. And I'm going to ignore the niceties and the intros and the salutations this time around because, man, do we have a long show, long road ahead of us, Scott.
Yes.
So I'm going to try and rapid fire through some of the news items for everybody, and then we're going to get into what I'm sure everyone's excited to hear about, and that's the remainder of the Wave 2 spoilers, which is actually really cool. And I'm a little surprised that we got them all dropped in this fashion this week as opposed to next week, but I'm glad we got it, and we'll get into that in a few moments. But as I mentioned, real quick, the early on news items. So to coincide with Wave 2, if you are a store or you want to get your store interested or anything like that, well, the Wave 2 promo material is out on the WPN network. So I just wanted to call that out. If you were paying attention or not paying attention to Toy Fair, the packaging, at least for Devastator, so people could physically see, I don't know if they could touch the box that the Devastator set is going to be in, which is kind of cool. There are definitely pictures out there. You can find them relatively easily. And then the third thing is we're going to, and this kind of segues into some of the other stuff, Wizards has been releasing articles from the design team through Facebook regarding some of the cards that were dropped in this big bulk dump, for lack of a better way to put it. We're getting some insight into the design thoughts. We've seen a few of these before, which is also really cool. Again, we mentioned it on other shows, but it is really nice that the design team is willing to speak with everyone, either such as our interview with Drew and John, or when they've spoken with other content creators, or doing these. They seem to be much more open in speaking with the general community than I've seen with other games. Are you getting that sense also, Scott? Like, did you get a chance to look at these?
Yeah, I read each one that came out, at least this week. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so if you want to check those out, like I said, they're over on the main Mothership Facebook page. And since we got so much to cover, I don't want to go too far into them because some of them are, well, all of them are directly relating to cards we're going to talk about anyway.
Right.
Now, one of the things we do want to get into before we get directly into the cards, because it actually influences our evaluation of these, is we got a new rules drop, Scott, and there are, including one that I believe was actually last night, as a clarification to some of the cards, some of the grouped cards, we'll call them, specifically the ones for tech research. There were a bunch of clarifications for how some of the combiners work and how they interact with I Still Function specifically, and also what does or does not work for tech research related upgrades. So you and I had talked a little bit about this offline, Scott. Personally, I understand where they came from. It logically makes sense. I don't inherently have a problem with it from a rules perspective on either of them. I would have liked the Combiner I Still Function one to work a little bit differently. And I have some reservations personally about the design philosophy behind the tech research related cards. But as a ruling, it seems okay. Where do you lie on this one? Or either of them?
I disagree with both of them.
Okay.
And I wrote them about the I Still Function ruling because I guess now what they're going to have to rule in general is if you I Still Function back any combiner piece, the entire combiner just dies. An end of term. So if that's how they want it to work, then fine. Then the card's just not playable in a combiner deck.
Right. And that may be intentional.
Which is bad.
Right.
Well, but I mean, it didn't do much outside of Dreadwing other than basically healing the combiner for 1 hit point, because it would have 1 less hit point than full damage when it was in play.
Right.
If you were able to actually, play an additional action and play the Enigma. So I don't know. I'm not a fan of the way that they ruled this. That if you I Still Function back one of the Dreadwing pieces, that Dreadwing would then have to be KO'd.
Right.
Because I feel like I Still Function puts a state base to use Magic terms, but I don't really know what else to use. Puts a state base effect on the card, and that card's no longer in play the same way, so the state based effect should go away. I also wasn't playing Magic during the transformation card, so I'm really not sure how that came into play either, so I might be wrong on that. But
I can see the argument either way. Like, I understand, because I also missed I think it was Innistrad block, where they had werewolves as the transformation cards, among other things, I'm sure. I didn't play during the block, so I'm not 100% on all of the details, but I see where you're coming from, and like I said, I could definitely see the argument there. I don't want to spoil things too much, but for those of you that read the comics, there's also a precedent there for this sort of thing sort of working. There is a pretty big story spoiler, so again, I don't want to digress for the sake of time and also not to spoil it, but from a mechanical perspective, I get it with the way the rules as written and where they're coming from. So I'm interested to see because we did have it, and this is kind of a can of worms, because we did have that ruling and then ruling reversal for Metroplex. I guess it isn't out of the realm of possibility that things could change. This one feels more set in stone, whereas the Metroplex thing would have been, I guess, a clarification, a revision that, okay, this is just not how it works, whereas this one is, I get the impression that they probably thought about this scenario a lot, and that this is the way they want it.
Yeah, I agree. But I don't agree with it from a game perspective, but I get it.
Right. Now, the other one, so we have Dreadwing, I Still Function. The other one, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, there's another one in the FAQ that I have thoughts on in the rules roundup, before we talk about the one that was just basically mentioned by a RotC staff member.
Oh, sure, go ahead. We'll tackle that one first.
So, like, the erratic lightning one, to me, I kind of understand.
Oh, yeah.
Even though I still don't agree with it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but it falls in the same way that it falls in the same ruling as the RC ruling, where the orange pips that you flip count as part of RC's ability. And I didn't think that was the case when the game was first dropped either.
Right.
Like, I thought it was her printed attack plus, like, any weapon she would have or anything like that. But when they ruled that it was orange pips as well, I guess I should have just realized that anything that affects either one, like attack or defense, is basically like a constant effect. So the -1 defense, like if you were a 0 and you flip 2 blue, like if you were a 1 or a 0 defense to start with, you put erratic lightning on something and you flip 2 blues, I assumed you'd have a defensive blue because you started with 0 no matter what happened.
Mm-hmm.
But if you were a 0 here and like you still stayed at 0 per the way the card reads, and you quote unquote went to -1. If you flip 2, you'd only be at 1 defense, whereas according to the ruling, whereas I assumed you'd be at 2.
Right.
So this will affect that -2 defense to Decepticons as well in the same way, I would assume. So
yeah, it's another one that I guess leading into it. Again, without digressing from playing and I know you played a whole bunch of other games, so whenever it gets into this sort of minutia of, well, this game does this, and that game does that, it always, at least for me, I might lean one way or the other. Oh, well, I think it's going to be this way or that way. My tact has basically been, I'll just wait until they officially rule it. If I'm going to an event and it hasn't been officially ruled, I'll find out what the ruling is going to be there, as in speak whatever the judge team staffing is going to be, to find out, because some of these, again, I follow the logic internally in the game. I personally don't have a problem with it, but I also see what your arguments are, Scott, so I can, like I said, going into it, I could have seen it going either way for some of these. Some of them I kind of expected to be the way they ruled it, just because it seemed to follow their MO, but it depends on the scenario.
This is fine. This is fine with me because I should have just assumed it worked like RC. I just wasn't thinking, so like I just thought it didn't work that way. But I'm fine with it because I think it's fine with me. It doesn't. I don't think it matters because any deck that's going to want to use erratic lightning shouldn't be playing a lot of blues anyway. So I don't think it'll come into play all that often. But
right, it is something that could happen. Obviously, limited events are a thing. So if you're playing that, it could be scenarios along those lines. Like I said, with the previous one that we were discussing, I can appreciate that it feels internally consistent. So, like you said, if you stopped and you think about it enough, it could turn out to be this way. The previous one about Dreadwing, I think, because I was in the same boat as you, that I would have assumed that you transformed or combined into the Gestalt, you're a new card. you would
Right.
not then die because you're a new card, and from previous card games, all those other effects fall off because that's
Right.
the way it always worked. Or most of the, I'm sure there are games that I played where that wasn't the case. But anyway, point being is that that is the common one, so I had internally assumed that. But again, turns out that's not the case, so just everybody out there listening, make sure that you're aware of those. The third one that I was jumping over the erratic lightning one, which is important.
No, it's fine. Yeah.
How do you feel about that one? Is it in the same boat as Dreadwing and erratic lightning, where you're not a fan, but it is what it is?
So this one I assume will be covered in the next rules update, which may be out by the time you're listening to the podcast.
Right.
So it was ruled by, I think, Matt Smith that all the upgrades that require you to play tech upgrade before they can be played are allowed to enter play by alternate means. The two examples right now are Jetfire's flip into bot mode and Hunker Down for tanks can get the armor. Both of them get the armor out of the scrap pile, and obviously Jetfire's ability could get the Pierce utility out of the scrap pile.
Yep.
So I assumed the way it was going to be ruled was, yes, these abilities work, but you must play tech upgrade first before you could do it. And I thought that was like a fair middle ground to either absolutely no, you can't do it, or absolutely yes, you can do it. But the ruling was absolutely yes, you can do it.
Yep.
And I guess my issue with this ruling is not the, I guess, the fact that it exists. My issue is that now, and we can get into this later, but like the most playable, the best one that has the most dominating like effect on the board is obviously the tough 4 armor.
Yeah, tough 4 is a big deal. Let's just throw that out there.
So now that you have 2 ways to get it into play, essentially like for free, to me is a problem. Like, because there are cards in other card games, Magic specifically, that have these one-of combos that the card would not be playable outside of the one-of combo, and then the one-of combo makes it like borderline, broken or OP, however you want to say it. And right. I just have an issue with things like that, where the spirit of the card itself, it's not going to see a lot of play. And I don't necessarily know that these wouldn't have seen a lot of play, but now they'll see play because you can cheat them into play. And I think that's where I just have an issue with it.
Yeah, I can see that. And I kind of agree with you where it's, at the same time, because of the way it's worded, they were obviously, and this kind of rounds out the ruling, is that they were very precise in choosing play this as opposed to, the limitation is on playing it. And they could have said, put this on only if you played tech research, which, based on previous stuff, I think would have locked it out from the Jetfires, the Hunker Down effects. Because of that,
yes.
Obviously, they knew what they were doing, whether... And as a power level thing, it may ultimately be fine. As you said, we've seen these sort of effects, these sort of interactions exist in other card games. Sometimes it's okay, sometimes it's not. Given that they allowed it here, maybe it's fine power level wise, but I do agree with you that it rubs the wrong way when it's, well, the whole point is that it's a 2-card combo to get one of these things out, and now I'm getting around it. Yes, that's part of card games, is doing that, but it didn't feel necessary here. I don't know. Without playing with it, it feels wrong, I guess, but at the end of the day, it's fine. It is what it is.
I just feel the only way you're going to see these enter play is by cheating them now, and no one's going to even attempt to play them the way they were intended, because why would you when any tank can just get it back with Hunger Down, or Jetfire can just play it on turn 1? So,
we might as well start sliding or segueing into the actual spoilers. So I've had the superior ones up on screen for while we were discussing it, but just to give everybody a quick glance at tech research, it's a green pip. It's blank. The really tiny text, if you zoom in on the video, it says you may play these other cards, basically. It doesn't do anything else. So we'll swap back to the upgrades, just so everybody, nobody asks, what does tech research do? Do you think this precludes Superior Cannon from really ever seeing play then, the bold one?
I mean, I don't think that card's good enough anyway to take up your entire, like, action. So essentially the point of these is that they take up your entire turn, both phases. Yep. Like, I was writing an article today where I used the term phase. Even though I know obviously they don't happen in different phases, but so yeah, I would.
That's probably a better descriptor than saying your action.
Right. Yeah, that was the problem. Is I couldn't say like action, but so because of that, I think that's the point. Is that it was supposed to take up your entire turn's worth of action phases,
right?
To play one of these, and I just don't. I think that only superior plating was worth the effort. I mean, I appreciate that the right color pips are on the side, so I guess that adds a little bit more value to it.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, like, I don't think you would want to. I think spending an entire turn to get bold 4 is weaker than just better options that exist right now. I mean, you're talking like one better than Supercharge, like, really. I mean, mathematically, it could be better. It's not going to be better than Grenade Launcher because, I mean, yes, it's permanent, but because you have to play some amount of green pips in your deck to make it work.
I mean, let's be realistic.
Essentially blanks.
Your odds are you weren't getting multiple swings out of that, whatever you played it on. And if you, in general, I'd like to believe if you played, any other playable weapon and got multiple swings out of it, you're probably in a good enough position as it is, let alone this because you took up your entire turn. I don't know. Yeah, I agree with you. I don't picture they would have been there otherwise. Although, you never know. Maybe it'll happen. Because it is... Bolt 4 is still a big punch.
Yeah.
I'm going to reach and say maybe Metroplex. But then you'd have to find room to squeeze in tech researches. Which, that's the big issue. Is it's a numbers game. I mean, more so than other decks with that particular archetype. As it stands, I mentioned this offline, I've built and have lists and lists all littering, the basement that I'm in, for various Jetfire builds, and then a bunch of tank lists and stuff before any of this came into play. So now it's just another facet of those lists, and I have to imagine that Superior Plating will make an appearance in those decks because it's not that hard to mill it. Or fling it in there with, say, Inspiring Leadership or something to set it up for a Hunker Down or even just a simple Jetfire flip.
No, the new Megatron automatically does it just by pitching it as when he attacks, as pitch an upgrade to draw 2 cards. So
exactly.
There's a combo right there. So
and that card feels like it was revealed an eternity ago. I almost forget about it because we've been doing spoilers for so long. Just as a heads up, we're not going to be doing spoilers forever. Starting next week, we're going to get back more into some of our normal Tech Talk thoughts. But yeah, I'm looking forward to trying these out. We already discussed the bold one, the tough one, obviously. Do you see the Pierce 4 being enough to entice you?
No.
Yeah. I mean, it had to be there because it's, you have your 3, I guess, major pips, and it's the other original keyword. But yeah, I'm not super excited about it.
I mean, I guess if you're playing some defensive Jetfire deck, like, you could probably play it as a one-off. Just, like, if you were going to play it and if you're going to use him to put, I don't know, like, the blue-based weapons on him anyway. Again, it's very similar to how we talked about Springer last week, where, like, the Pierce is not totally irrelevant in a control-on-control matchup. But I don't see how this takes up the deck slot at all.
Well, one thing that I've run into with Jetfire builds in the past, and maybe it'll be different this time around, and not to digress too much so we can keep the ball rolling, but it's... You don't get as many Jetfire flips as you think you might, because obviously you want to be flipping your other guys. So yeah, you get the first one, but getting that second one can be more effort than it may seem initially, or at least it has been for me, because then your other 2 guys need to be able to function with either less flips or no flips. Maybe with, if you're pulling Superior Plating on turn 1, you're probably okay then. Assuming you're somewhat blue oriented, because
you were playing lists with Blast Shield and Force Field. You have to flip more often.
Right.
Tough 4, you don't have to flip as often.
Exactly. Yeah. So exactly. We'll have to see how it shapes up. I can't imagine that you're not going to, your first Rise of the Combiners event, there won't be anyone trying to make these things work. I think that there's a safe assumption out there that you'll run into these at some point. So that covers tech research and their guys. I know we're going a little bit out of order. I'm going to try and keep these in order, but obviously some of the cards go together. So the first set set of cards that go together is Ancient Wisdom and Unleash Potential. So another Magic analogy, if you remember the Wish cycle, this should sound familiar. If you played other games, there are similar effects in those. It seems really powerful at a glance. I don't know if it's worth the effort, because you have to have these two. If you draw 2 on the first one, it's play 2, draw 3, one of which you've tutored for. And we've seen a number of 1-star action cards that are pretty strong, but do you think this is changing? You're running full play sets of these, Scott? Are you excited to sleeve these up?
No, real quick, we're going to do all the battle cards and all the bots.
Yes.
Second?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the game plan anyway.
These both should have green in them, and they don't, and so they're unplayable, in my opinion.
Yeah, because they don't... I mean, the other one, the Unleash Potential, the second half of it does nothing. Like, literally nothing. If you don't play the first one. So it's a dead card, like you said, without at least a green on the first one. But I guess if it's orange-green, draw 2 every turn, or not every turn, but draw 2 that you could get back, that maybe that's why.
It's not a draw 2, though, if both of them are both upgrades or both abilities.
Well, I'm thinking
that good.
Well, I'm thinking looking at it as, if this were perfect scenario, is that what they were looking at, that it was too strong? But I'm not too excited by these. I mean, again, Metroplex builds, this would allow you to go get those 1-star things, or if you have full 25-star teams, so you really want to squeeze it in. But I'd be very curious what you're cutting to fit, presumably, 3 of each of these in. Because otherwise, there's no way you're going to find them quickly enough or consistently enough. So, yeah, I'm not too excited about those.
I just don't think the 1-star cards are powerful enough to want to go through all these hoops. Just play 1 less star, on your deck or something like play 3 less stars and play 3 of them. It's going to be more efficient than I think they're. I don't know. I mean, clearly this is just a fun thing. Like, trust me. Like, I don't think there's any other reason that it's not just quote. Like casual game type setup.
Oh, when it happens, it's going to feel awesome. But, yeah, competitively, I don't think it's going to... Yes, I will say right now, there will be a game where somebody plays these, gets the exact 1-star they need, and wins the next turn, kind of thing. It will happen. Law of averages. Right. I don't know if it's going to happen enough that you could justify just playing 6 other cards in your deck and winning those games anyway, or other games that you lost because you drew these things.
Yeah, I just think there's a disconnect between battle cards and character points, I guess, by showing that the hoops you have to jump through to just get 1 character point, so 1 star. So
yeah.
Yep.
So now into the actual battle cards proper. So this is going to be a mix of the upgrades and actions, just so we can get through them, and then we're saving all the characters for the end. So the first one up is Attack Drone, which is white-green, and it's cargo trailer, but in your attack slot, and for anybody, I guess.
Yeah, it's cargo. Well, it's not even as good as cargo trailer, right? Or is it?
No, because it doesn't. Each of them give 1 attack, the attack drones, and they do let you play them again, but it's not. It's not boosting extra. It's not multiplicative like cargo trailer is.
Yeah, I don't like this card.
I don't see. I mean, I get it. It's good that it's green, but yeah, I don't see a whole lot of excitement. Somebody said something funny that Rare Megatron can now have all the weapons. And
yes.
It's like, okay, he can, yes.
Equipment enthusiast let you draw even more cards, I guess is the point.
Yes? I don't know. It's not... I'm not super excited to waste time on this one. Like, either now or playing it. We'll put it that way.
I mean, you need 3 of them to get equal to an energy on that, because it doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, again, it's now that we have more cards, it's also an evaluation of, do you have the deck slots to spare for these things? You know, we have more good cards that you could be playing. You're really going to cut 3 cards to squeeze in 3 attack drones? Like, that seems... Yeah, I'd love to see the list, but I'm not super confident that it's going to be exciting. Next one up is Backup Beam, which is Flamethrower, but blue-green.
So I like this one less than the armor one.
Well, yes.
I don't think this one will see play, because the argument for using Flamethrower is in an all-orange, or extremely heavily slanted orange deck, that you get the orange pip on the bold weapon. And this was always the argument for like why I, long time ago, did the math on like Power Sword versus Flamethrower. But when that's out the window, then Power Sword just becomes better. I like the idea of making the combat flips an extension of your hand, which is what all green does, and I like the fact that you can get equipment with it or upgrades with it. I just don't think this one's good enough. Like, I think the Nobles Blaster and the Scoundrels Blaster are just better than this. So I'd probably just play them instead.
Not to be a broken record, but there is potential for Metroplex with this guy. If you really wanted to make sure you had flamethrowers, I don't know if, given that you have Power Punch, I don't know if you're still running flamethrowers. I mean, yes, you'll get the consistent bold, but you really just want to guarantee any given trigger. So I don't know if having it's all going to depend on what the numbers come out to be. There are a couple other ones that you'll hear me bring up later, probably, that, oh, well, maybe Metroplex wants this, so there is the potential for that. Moving from there, unless you had any other thoughts, I didn't want to cut you off.
No, I mean, there's other ones that mirror this that I think are just better.
Yes. The other one you're referring to, I'm really excited about, but we'll get to that one later. This one, Bashing Shield, is orange-green. It is drill arms, but an armor.
See, these are better.
Yes. So initially I was real excited. I'm like, oh, well, it's just drill arms, but you can get it all the time. And then somebody pointed out it doesn't have the draw card clause. And I said, oh, well, that's not, maybe it's not as exciting as I thought. And then I realized, well, I almost never want to play drill arms to draw a card. I mean, yes, it happens, but I want to pop armors. So I feel like this may replace drill arms in a lot of lists that I'm running. I mean, depending on what the color pips shake out to be and that sort of thing. Are you thinking the same way, Scott?
If it's not a heavy control deck that just wants the blue, I would say yes. I mean, I really like this card with Windblade. I really like this card. This allows this exactly allows your combat piles to become extensions of your hand when you need to get this. So, I like this card a lot. I think this is... I mean, I guess a lot of aggressive decks don't run Scrapper Gauntlets now, even though it's an orange. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, this seems like a better one-of in aggressive decks to get rid of armor than potentially running like an extra ramming speed or a crystal or something like that.
That was going to be my question. Would you cut crystal for this?
I don't run those decks a lot, so I don't know like how good the crystal really is being activated more than once. If it doesn't get activated more than once, you at least get one armor out of this, so it may come into play in some way, shape, or form, whereas crystal obviously does nothing, and the armor can be replayed technically if you don't kill the character right there and then.
Yep.
So I would assume this is better than that, because it just you can play it as a one-of, and it'll show up more.
Yeah, my initial... I'm leaning towards that, me personally, which means it's probably wrong and crystal's the better play, but my initial thought is that I'm at least going to try replacing crystals with this, if for no other reason than because it's green. Like you said, it's an extension of your hand now. It's increasing your chances to make sure that you see it. Every game that I want to destroy an armor, I really am going to want to destroy an armor. It's really difficult to fight through them. So making sure that if I want it, I'm gonna get it is a good enough incentive for me. We'll put it that way.
Yeah, and my Windblade shells that I've scratched out definitely have this card in it.
Oh yeah, I mean it's a good multi-pip, so I would imagine, yeah. Our next one up is Cooling Vents, which is your healing armor, but it's orange. I assume this is supposed to be for planes, because they seem to have that theme of opposite color pip versus whether, you know, orange is for defensive armors and then blues for offensive stuff, and they're all ranged. I'm not too excited about only healing one, though. Most of the time, that doesn't seem like it's good enough. It's just, oh, hey, by the way. And including in planes, oftentimes, at least prior to this, planes were just, well, they were paper airplanes, we'll put it that way. So, is this changing your mind either on that front or other ones, Scott?
Yeah, this is not good enough.
Yeah.
This is similar to other cards. This is similar to other cards where it's like +1 armor is not good enough unless you're getting something out of it, like multi-mission gear type of thing.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, the minimum armor you should ever be playing is tough 2, which in a defensive deck will get you 2 armor on most turns.
Right.
So you, +1 armor is just not good enough. It has to come attached with an ability that's extremely powerful, which is why right now Scrapper Gauntlets does not see play, because destroying a weapon after it's already been used is not good enough.
Yep.
This is healing 1, like that's just not good enough. Like I get why it's not more, because for some reason I guess Medic set the standard that like it's a colorless pip to heal 2, and that's not good enough.
Yep.
So I get what they were trying to do, and there's probably just no good way to balance it based on cards that already exist, unless you want to just do a straight upgrade to cards that already exist, which has happened.
Yes.
But so this is a limited card, obviously. I see no other reason for it.
Definitely agree there. I could add a lot more words, but we're short on time, so no.
Yep.
Crash Landing, though. I mentioned this offline. I foresee a lot of people saying, this is the answer for Ramjet. This is why Ramjet exists. I think it will see play, or at least I'm certainly going to try it with, we'll say, other planes, not Ramjet. Does this have you turning, because I know you weren't a huge plane fan going into Wave 2. Does this turn it around for you, Scott?
No, because I don't want my guys just to die. And the problem is that the planes I actually want to play are dependent on playing other utilities.
True.
And this would take up that slot, even if I understand some people have said, well, it's the last thing you can put on them before they die. It's like, I don't want them to die. Like, they're usually the centerpiece of the deck. Like,
yeah.
So, I mean, this is not like bug bomb level awful. Like, it obviously has a use.
Well, this helps you win in a more direct way. Obviously, bug bomb has positive effects, but this is, well, I might kill their guy when this goes off. But I don't think that's gonna happen that much. Like I said, I'm willing to try it. I'm not gonna rest pin all my hopes on Crash Landing making it work.
I think it's good for aerial bots. I think it's way better than aerial bot formation. I think this will see play as a 3-of in the aerial bot deck.
Interesting. Okay. Off the top of my head, most of them, it's basically another plasma burst, I think.
Which is fine, because they're not supposed to live. That's the point.
True. I guess it'll depend on whether, would plasma burst itself just be better, but that's up for debate at this stage.
I mean, I think you could play it in other versions, especially if, like, the random good stuff decks that, like, I hear all these people that want to run Acid Storm, who I think is unplayable. And the other issue is some of the heavier attack planes depend on bold, like Starscream Air Commander, or even regular Starscream or Jetfire. And so, like, that doesn't technically get added to, like, that doesn't help this card, technically. True,
but I think if you were to tag... So, I have 2 rebuttals, I guess. One, I think tagging somebody for 5, if it's a Jetfire, is probably... I mean, that feels good enough. But, it's not really a rebuttal for the second piece. To your earlier point that you don't want your guys to die to begin with, and getting that set up is often more challenging than people may think. Unless all of your guys survive to the wheel turn, or the guy you want to survive to the wheel turn, is the most damaged, and they have to swing in, and they are going to get him, I think the dance to get it to work is going to be more challenging than people might think.
I mean, the two obvious ones to put this on are the aerial bot that has Brave and on Blitzwing when he's a plane. But
Right.
Blitzwing's power is not very high, and he costs you 11 stars. So again, I just don't want a card that's going to depend on my high star characters just fighting it. That's why I just think it's good for aerial bots personally. But
I think
I will probably lose to this card because if you put this on a guy where you're forcing someone to attack him and there's no choice, I can just see myself losing this card randomly personally. But
yeah,
it's not good. But
it's something I definitely want to try just because having a larger one shall stand feels like it's powerful enough to break the turn asymmetry of they swing in, they get a guy, I swing in, I get a guy. Now it's they swing in, well, I'll trade guys and then go after your other guy. I don't know. We'll have to see. This one, I agree with a lot of the things you were saying, so I don't want anybody to think that this is the be-all, end-all at this stage, because I don't think I can go that far on it. I do like it, but not that much.
I like it for air robots a lot, to be honest with you.
So how do you feel about the new double blue pip?
Not a fan.
Yeah, it was interesting to me that it's it costs a star, but it's a better of the Dinobot one.
Yeah, it's weird.
It definitely, it fits Energized Field, the artwork, all that stuff on, you get too close, you're going to get zapped, but it feels weird. I've had builds where I went not super heavy quantity of cards with blue, but I use the double blues so that way, anytime you flipped one, you're getting 2 out of it on defense. Maybe there's a shell somewhere there, but if you're only running one of these, because I can't imagine you're going to be able to fit in all 3 and you wouldn't have wanted Leap of Faith first. I don't know. I'm not super excited about this one. I feel like Leap of Faith just overshadows a lot of these in general.
I have to run the math on what happened 9 double pips versus 6 and really see the difference, and I plan to do that this week. So I really can't evaluate it because they underpowered it specifically because it's double blue as opposed to Mounted Missiles is clearly not underpowered. So there's definitely
I don't. That's another weird point, is that Mounted Missiles feel so much stronger than, aside from offensive stuff being generally higher powered because you're proactively doing things, but I don't know. Maybe it turns out,
I would have just given it +2 armor and moved on with life, but I get what they were trying to go for here, sort of. But
right. What about Energon Slingshot? So, and unless did you have anything else you want to throw in for our double blue? Okay.
No, that's good.
Energon Slingshot. So it's Zap, but blue and for melee guys. It's cool that it's another upgrade that's doing damage. It's interesting that Armored Hovercraft for range tags everybody. Melee only deals it to 1. I guess there's a theme there. But since it's off the top of my head, and as I was prepping for this, I don't know what blue melee guys. Obviously you have Nemesis, and I guess Prime and half of his side. I don't know what wants this right now.
Cars decks, maybe.
A blue Zap is fine, but having the added restriction makes it weird. And it eats up a potentially important slot, because if you're playing... Presumably this isn't a blue deck, right? Because it's the blue pip.
Right.
Otherwise you'd be running Zap, probably. Because it just for the sake of more... You got more options. If that's the case, that means you probably want to be running Energon Axe. Most decks are running that anyway. Now this is chewing up your Energon Axe slot and your Energon Axe play. It feels as though it's conflicting with a bunch of stuff, even though the effect is, it's fine. I don't dislike it, but...
I haven't... I guess I agree with you. I don't know what blue melee decks would want this as opposed to either signature weapons or like a blue, like they need blue decks need weapons to do damage.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you know, I mean,
Predacons maybe, I guess, because they'll have the extra. Go ahead.
I don't know. I guess it's no worse than like you're gonna have to make a decision on some of these, like this versus drill arms type of situation, because that's the type of thing that you run in those types of decks,
right?
And that's really what it's going to come down to. Like, it's clearly the replaceable weapon that you eventually replace, but you might be able to get some value out of it for a bit. So it's clearly like one of the backup weapons you run. I just don't think there's ever going to be any room for this thing to see play.
Yeah, I foresee myself, because I have a giant spreadsheet that's growing rapidly with once we got everything for Wave 2, and I foresee this being on the list for virtually everything that it could be played in. So I have enough melees, I'm blue already, and then I foresee it sitting on the cutting room floor, or you know, in a very old column, and never actually making it to the final 40 in a lot of scenarios.
Yeah, I agree.
Obviously, in limited, this would almost always get played, I would think. As long as you have melee guys that you can play it on.
Yeah, I agree.
So Enforcement Batons is the other half of the Drill Arms Scrapper Gauntlets scenario. This time it's popping a weapon. Again, it's orange-green, which is of note that they didn't alternate the pips on these. This is a weapon, and it's popping weapons. As we mentioned before, destroying weapons usually isn't that exciting. Have there been any off the top of your head from Wave 2 that said, no, now I need to actually pack weapon removal?
I mean, it's good, like, against mining pick and the decks that use it as a combo enabler, as opposed to just a good weapon. Like, right. An Insecticon build that uses it isn't, or a Dinobot aggressive deck that uses it, or a Cars deck that uses it is not as good as, say, a, Starscream Decepticon King deck that uses it. It needs it as the combo enabler. So, I was running, I ran ramming speed in one of my decks specifically to take out decks in the area that were running thermal weaponry because I was a blue-based deck. So, like, in those types of situations, there are certain weapons you want to take care of. I just think that for general decks, there's just better options. This, again, like, I might run as a one-of in my Windblade deck, but I think it's obviously worse than the armor one, but it's not terrible.
Right.
I just don't think it'll make I don't think it'll make any deck except for Windblade, like, as a one-of. Like, I just, again, like you said, like, destroying weapons is not good enough, but maybe decks that want it, if it was blue, it might be a different story, because most decks that would want it would be blue. But it depends on how many, I guess it depends on what kind of combo decks we see with mining pick as to how ubiquitous it is in the format.
I think that's a reasonable assertion for this. I guess the only... Most weapons I've seen generally are only you're getting that single use, and then the guy is either toast or the game is ending in short order there afterwards. You're not usually getting a whole lot of swings a lot of the time. I know there are scenarios where that is not the case, whereas armors, by their very nature, are trying to draw out the lifespan of the character that it's on. So unless you remove it, you're fighting through it every time. Whereas weapons, there's always the option of, well, just go kill that guy, and then you won't have to deal with the weapon anyway. I don't know. Like you said, other than Windblade, I'm not super thrilled about it. Espionage, though, is something that I am excited about, not simply because of Shockwave builds, which there are a bunch of cards that actually help, I guess, dedicated combo-esque Shockwave lists. Espionage feels powerful with the caveat that there are a lot of no battle icon cards that I would love to strip away, and it can't get those. At least I'm assuming as of this second they haven't said anything that you can name null or empty or whatever as a battle pip or battle icon of that color.
No, I don't think you can.
Yeah, I would assume you cannot. Does that dampen your enthusiasm for this card? Do you care about this one at all?
Hand sizes dampen my opinion of this card.
Well, there's that too.
I don't think there's, like, this card in this game as a one-of targeted thing to me is just not good enough, because, I mean, most of the time you're playing off the top or with small hand sizes to begin with. And unless you like, I mean, I've definitely seen situations where you proactively know what your opponent has in their hand because they treasure hunt and like
Right.
are holding multiple weapons that, you know, or multiple equipment or upgrades that they got off the treasure hunt. They only play one of them, so you know what the other ones are, and then you just pinpoint get rid of it. Like, I've seen people then like security checkpoint in reaction to that. But security checkpoint for one card is not good. And I just feel like this for one card is just not good enough. Like, I don't even play Disruptive Entrance anymore because the only reason I was playing it was because Optimus could play it for free off his flip. Like, taking my turn to play Disruptive Entrance always felt terrible to me.
Right.
That's why I cut it. So,
do you, to the hand size part, do you feel, and we may be getting ahead of ourselves, but we have seen a number of cards such as Pep Talk that are actual net card advantage, as in you're gaining cards when you play them. Does that influence your decision at all? Do you feel that those will see enough play that maybe this will be a thing? I mean, like you said, Disruptive Entrance ended up riding the pine and sitting on the wayside, despite the fact that it could still strip away things like I Still Function or One Shall Stand, which are game changers. This one cannot touch those, regardless, anyway, at least as far as we know. Do you think that there will be enough increased hand sizes? I mean, you mentioned Megatron earlier, and there are a number of additional card draw effects.
Like, this needs to see play early, and right. Because you want your opponent to have a larger hand size, and like I just don't see that. I don't see where you're going to want this to see play. Other like you said, other than Shockwave, I just don't. I get why it exists. Like I get that it could be good. I just the nature of the way that the game plays out, I just don't think it's good enough to see play.
I can see that.
I might be wrong, but I might be wrong because like I may be just undervaluing pinpoint discard like this. But I just my experiences with Disruptive Entrance leave me wanting more out of discard. Mm-hmm. And so that's just my experience with it.
Well, a lot of scenarios do play out the way you've been describing or alluding to, is that barring treasure hunt and they net 4 cards kind of thing, you often have a very small hand. Yes, you'll probably be able to get something, but if you name orange and you strip Improvise Shield and not a grenade launcher kind of thing, because, hey, they just played the grenade launcher, or they just played the, whatever. I get what you're saying. I imagine it's going to be in every Shockwave list, but yes, I get where you're going with it outside of that.
Yeah. Again, and okay. I think it's good for Windblade.
Yeah, because hey, playing things for free seems good.
Right.
Like you said, not taking up your turn. That seems like a good scenario.
Exactly. That's the point. That's
right.
That's why I think it's really good with her, personally.
Right. What about Fling, where it's the worst case bombing run, but with no pip?
I mean, Wheelie's on the card, right? So we can move on.
We'll leave it at that, yes. Speaking of Shockwave-related cards, well, I guess he's not necessarily Shockwave-related, but Fog of War. So it's everybody discards down to 2 and/or draws up, well, not and/or, or draws up to 2.
So this card's really good to me. I just don't know how much it's going to see play outside of Shockwave decks. I can certainly see scenarios where aggressive decks will run this in general because it's white against, and then just have tremendous advantage against control decks at all times, whether or not they're getting the damage off Shockwave or just in general, just because you're going to have less cards in your hand because you're always playing something.
Right.
I guess my issue is like, the game doesn't really play out that way, like the way it does in traditional card games of control versus aggro. Like, if you have an upgrade and an action every turn, you're pretty much playing your upgrade and your action every single turn. So, like,
it's rare that, you're going to hold it.
Yeah. It's weird where, like, your opponent's going to have 5 cards in your hand, you have 2. It happens to me a lot because I guess I make more efficient decks than other people. I just happen to be like, how many cards do you have in your hand? 5. I'm like, man, I only have 2. Like, how's that? Obviously, I have more stuff in play than they do, but like,
right.
I guess it just depends on like the what's the term? Like I want to say blow through, but I'm trying to think like it's not really that term. Like, I guess I can certainly see where like combo cards, like the specialist equipment and things like that, would want to play this because they're going to be low in cards by playing additional things out of their hand.
There is that
versus their opponents. I think this is a solid card. I just have to I have to see more where I would want it to, because you want it to draw 2 for you and make you, like, if you can draw a card, like drawing a card to make your opponent discard 1 card is not good enough, but if it's like 2 and 2, that's obviously good enough.
Right.
It just depends.
Is there any inkling in your mind that this was a preemptive anti-Sunstorm, anti-Bombshell nonsense card?
I think these are Shockwave cards put in there to allow that archetype to continue.
And I think you're right.
Maybe.
There is something to be said that he's probably the most easily discernible character on there.
Yeah.
Right in the artwork. Subtle hints there. I mean, you can make out other people, but so heavy-handed.
I mean, we'll get to it later, but like Testify is clearly like in there for Shockwave as well. Yeah. So
that is exactly what jumped to my mind when I saw it as well. But the next one we have up is Heavy-Handed, which is the pseudo reverse. The bigger they are. The
art's really good.
Yeah, it's really, the art is pretty cool. Most of I have to say, a lot of the, as always, I like a lot of the artwork. I'm not sure. There are scenarios that I envision the Pierce 4 is both going to come up and matter. So, you know, punching down onto Flame War, for example. But I assume this is just going to be if you want a 7th, 8th, and 9th blue combat pump. So you already have Bigger They Are, you already have Leap. Now you want this. Is that the way you're envisioning it, or do you see it going some other way?
I mean, I guess the primes will run this over Leap two character decks, but like I don't think 3 character decks should run this over Bigger They Are. I mean,
that was something that, as I was thinking about it, so your prime punching into their nemesis or prime buddy, whoever it happens to be, you know, at 13 stars, you're probably getting the Pierce. They're blue, so yes, you're getting it. Whether that matters, I guess, is up for debate, but I don't know.
Right, but in that situation, it'll be Bigger They Are, but except for the partner going into the opposing prime.
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, I prefer the Bigger They Are because I like those kind of decks better, but I actually think combiners will like this card, even though the combiner pieces obviously want Bigger They Are. I think the combiners themselves want this card because like they're always going to be swinging down.
Yeah.
And they don't always necessarily have these gigantic stats that are going to be relevant, so I can see where it would see play there. I just don't know if that's going to matter.
Yeah.
Like, Devastator wants this card, I guess. I don't know.
I could see it. It just feels like, okay, is that your best option? And without having, you know, I mean, I have a bunch of deck lists, but I don't have really refined ones, obviously. I don't know if it's, like I said, is this really your best option? You're telling me there's nothing else that you could put in that slot, and maybe that's the case.
Yeah.
It seems fine, I guess.
Yeah.
Now, what about, not to, again, I apologize out there for people without an extensive Magic background, but I've heard the term Ancestral Recall thrown around for Intelligence Mission. I've heard it before. I really like this card. I talked a lot about Inferno Breath when we reviewed that one. This one also seems pretty cool, and again ties back to, do we anticipate that there are going to be larger hand sizes in general now that all these effects exist? But are you still hot on this card, Scott? It sounded like you were pretty excited when we first saw it.
I guess, like, I would run it as a one-of specialist decks, especially the ones that are running the 5-cost characters.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think you only need to do it once a game to set yourself up for... Again, this is obviously outside of dedicated combo decks, which a lot of these cards I wish I had before I was doing my Bombshell review.
Yeah.
So combo decks aside, of course, Sunstorm and Bombshell decks aside, the cost on this is steeper. Like, you're not doing damage, you're taking an attack away.
Yes.
You know, etc. But I think if you do this once, you should be ahead. I think 3 for 1 is above the curve, whereas I think 2 for 1 is below the curve. I know there's no way to be in between, but like,
Yeah, it's not an unglued set. We can't.
Right. So, I think this will see play. I mean, like, because it has a white icon.
Yeah.
The cost is not that steep. And I think you definitely dig far enough as an action where you can continue to play an upgrade that will matter and keep that character that you tapped alive. It just depends on whether or not you're playing 5 or 6 cost specialists.
Yeah,
and there's not better options.
Yeah, obviously the one that jumps to mind is going to be Flame War. There are a number of specialists among the various combiner teams, so it can help you go find things that you need. I guess the comparison for me is am I going to be replacing Treasure Hunt with this? And even if I am I willing to, as you said, pay the cost associated with it, since I'm going to be losing an attack, which isn't necessarily always about pushing damage. Sometimes it's about putting another blocker out there so that they aren't getting at the guy you're trying to gear up.
Right.
And that's, I don't know. I'm honestly, and not to, be really wishy-washy about it, but I'm just not sure at this stage, because if you could dig, again, you could treasure hunt without having to pay any cost, go get an upgrade, which you would have to find. So the scenario where I'd want this instead of treasure hunt is going to get another action, but then I have to wait another turn to play that action.
Not necessarily. Like, not with, like, the new Bumblebee, not with Confidence. Like, there's definitely...
Yeah, there are ways...
I think that want it,
Well, but remember, Confidence, how were you playing that then? Because you only get the one action.
In cars. Oh, you're saying because I know what you're saying. Like, you're not getting an extra action.
Exactly. So, yes, you could then dig Confidence into... So that gets you 5 cards. You'll probably find whatever the other thing is that you wanted, and then go from there. But without... I mean, if you're obviously already playing Specialist, so maybe it's do this, dig for multi-mission gear, play multi-mission gear to play the action that you really wanted to play, and then just go nuts. But that's something that I don't know what that looks like yet. So like I said, I'm still on the fence about this thing. I'm not sure where I lay. 3 cards, like you said, it feels as though it's enough, because that's a lot of cards. We'll just have to see, kind of thing.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, this one I'm actually really excited about, and that's Marksmanship. So it's a blue plasma burst. Yes, there are conditions, but it's a blue plasma burst.
Yeah, these conditions are not any... See, this is the thing about... I've had conversations about this. I had some conversations about this at the tournament on Saturday. If you're... We were talking about, like, in reference to, like, body armor and things like this. If your deck can run the card because it has requirements, you can only play it on a certain thing, it's going to be singularly powerful in that deck. It doesn't really matter how overall the card, how much play the card can see overall. Like, oh, well, body armor can only go in melee decks. Yeah, well, the guy you want it to be on happens to be melee. Like, yeah. Okay, so you can't run it in your range deck. Sorry. So this is the same way. Like, if you have enough range characters and you're playing a blue deck, you're going to play this card. Like, there's just no doubt about it.
Now, the second restriction, not to break your train of thought, but is that something that concerns you, that the enemy has to be in bot mode?
It concerns me more because of the number of combiner pieces that I think we had an article on it last week, the number of combiner pieces that were playable outside of the teams that don't need to flip.
Mm-hmm.
But okay, so I can't use it on your 5-drop? Like who cares? Like you can use it on a lot of the powerful characters you're gonna want to use it on.
Yeah, this feels oh god, sorry.
So, and there's more of them, more of the normal non-combiner team bots that are coming out in this set are gonna want to be in bot mode.
Most characters want to be in bot mode anyway, or at least attack in bot mode, so that they'll be vulnerable for some length of time in order for you to snipe them. Assuming you want to, and not their other guy that they have transformed hanging out over there. Obviously, we'll play this, and we'll see if it turns out that, no, it's too awkward, but I have a hard time believing that it's going to be too awkward. It just feels like...
it seems awesome to me. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't see how it's not, but maybe we're totally off. We'll see. Now, this next one is bizarre. Uh, it very much fits being a rare because it falls in, maybe not necessarily because of power level, but because of how weird it is, and that's Master Plan, where you just plan 6. I have no idea. I mean, yes, I can think of scenarios where you want multiple instances of plan, but plan 6 is a lot. Is this something that you already have something in mind for?
And he's grapple playable, I guess, right? I mean,
well, yes, there is that. I mean, clearly you're only playing this like once a game. If you manage to play Master Plan and, you know, hit more than Plan 2 each time, then I'm going to be blown away. But
I think there are better ways to win the game with Starscream than this card.
Yes.
But
go ahead.
I mean, you'll win when you play this card because you have to set your hand up to win. Like, you're always going to put like double orange, some mana blue, orange, double orange type of thing if you can. Like, that's obviously the scenario you want. Oh no, that doesn't even work because you're going to draw the 5th card or something like that. It's just weird.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
What do you foresee it, just for the sake of argument, as a plan 3 every time because it's green?
I was going to say that. Like, that's a fair assessment. Like, yeah. I mean, the only time you would want plan 5 is in Starscream decks because the first crown you flip is going to flip 2 more cards.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to put like the second. Well, then you have to do 6. So that doesn't even work. Well, it doesn't matter. You can draw 1 too, I guess.
I just don't see weird. This one. I foresee a lot of binders being full of these, I guess, is the way I'll put it.
Yeah, I mean, again, like, I just don't see how you can ever have enough cards in your hand. Like you said, if it's a plan 3, I think that's fine. Like, if you're able to somehow set that up, I just don't see it that big of a deal.
But even then, unless it's one of those weird Bombshell or Sunstorm builds, or even maybe a Shockwave concoction which I guess kind of fits with Master Plan for Shockwave, but I don't foresee you having enough card. You know, you plan 2 even, and that's now 3 cards out of your hand. As we discussed earlier, typically you don't have, 10 card hands. Okay, you can spend the next 4 turns refilling because clearly your initial plan involved getting a whole lot of cards in hand. I don't know. I'm not super excited to play Master Plan myself.
I mean, it's good on a wheel turn if you have like 4 double orange.
There is that.
Yeah,
just go nuts.
I don't know. It can happen. I mean, I can see scenarios where it would happen. I doubt it.
I guess it's blue-green, so that means that you're playing. I don't know. Yes,
you get it on defense and you set up your attack. Like, cars could want this. I don't know. Maybe
there will be law of averages. Somebody's going to lose to it, setting up a gazillion double oranges. But Pep Talk, our next one, I'm actually kind of excited about, and it's very simple. There's only 3 words technically in the text box. It's draw 2 cards. But it's actually net cards. Do you like this more than Inspiring Leadership?
I'm also really excited for this card to tell people how wrong they are that this is a good card.
Ooh, okay. So tell me, why is this bad?
Because card advantage doesn't matter as much in the game.
You don't feel that it's... Okay, go ahead.
It only matters because cards like Mining Pick exist. So that you need ways to refill your hand to consistently be able to do this. But there are way better options. I would rather play Inspiring Leadership over this every single time because you're digging farther in your deck to get to the upgrade that you want. It's the nature of the game that I have an article coming out by the time you're listening to this that will explain that there's many more ways to actually be able to cheat the system in this set than there were in the first set to play more than one action upgrade on a turn. But I just don't think this is good enough. Like, I don't think the drawing 2 for 1 card and your action for the turn is good enough. Like, I can attack with Drag Strip and do the same thing. I can almost attack with Blitzwing and get half this effect. I can flip a starter Optimus and get this effect. Like this just isn't good enough to me. Like, I can flip Torox and get I can flip a bunch of 5 stars to get to get half this effect. Like, this just isn't good enough.
See, I was getting excited because of, as you said, your article for Bombshell probably would have liked to have seen this ahead of time.
Fair enough. Right? Exactly.
I agree with the assessment you're making, and obviously, like you said, there'll be. You said you have an article that should be releasing before we put this up.
Yeah, it should be out, quote, tomorrow.
Okay.
From the time we're recording, yes.
So, I agree with you, and that's why I was asking you about inspiring leadership, because I like inspiring leadership more myself. Simply, it's kind of the swindled confidence argument where, I mean, the direct comparison between those two isn't great, but each of those lets you dig, and then either inspiring leadership lets you dig deeper. You don't care about the discard, just like swindled and confidence lets you go dig for the thing you want. So it's card draw with a purpose, I guess.
Right.
You're going to find something. The raw advantage, I think I disagree with you to some extent that card advantage is irrelevant, but the reason that it's relevant not because of the card advantage, but the action advantage in the scenarios where it matters. In this case, it doesn't. And as a result, therefore, Pep Talk isn't as exciting outside of, I just want to draw a bazillion cards.
I mean, the fact that it's blue tells you it's not good enough, because if it was good enough, it would be orange.
Right.
because they would be showing you that control deck shouldn't be running. Mm. But now they're like enticing you to play it because, it's also blue. That's why it's just not good enough.
Yeah. Things like, again, not to beat a dead horse, but inspiring leadership gets you one card closer to trying to find, say, the body armor that you really wanted to go get, sort of thing.
Right.
This is, if you look at it from that perspective, this is just a straight up weaker, well, maybe not straight up weaker, but a weaker inspiring leadership in a lot of the scenarios that you want.
There will be people that will disagree, but I mean, I challenge them to record for a straight month every single game they play, and when they win or lose, how many cards they had in their hand. And if the answer is more than 0, then they're wasted cards.
Right.
And that, as long as that the sum of those numbers will be much greater than the number of games they played. So at some point you would have wasted an action, in my opinion.
Right. Yeah, I see things that I want to run this in, but a lot of them boil down to, well, Sunstorm wants a million cards in hand, so I want the redundancy of the effect, sort of thing. Same story for Bombshell. Outside of that, it's it's everything Scott was saying. We'll go with that. The next one is Press the Advantage, which also feels like we revealed it an eternity ago because it wasn't in that giant dump. It was in, a regular reveal beforehand, I believe. So this is an orange-green. Gives an Autobot, one of yours, +2 attack. Gives an enemy Decepticon -2 defense, which again, based on the erratic lightning ruling, could if they have 0 defense, could be negating their first 2 blue pips. Although I have a hard time thinking of any 0 defense guys that are running in blue decks. But
yeah, I guess fair.
That's another discussion. I'm also kind of surprised that we didn't see a Decepticon version of this, unless I'm forgetting about something.
Bad Attitude is the Decepticon version of this.
Is it?
Yeah, it's the rare.
I guess
it's not good. It's not good, but that's what it is.
Okay, we'll go with it. Okay, so it's a bigger they are with a weirder second half. But
it's better. It's better than that.
You think the -2 defense is better than the Pierce, is what you're saying?
Well, again, this comes into play with like card decks or aerial bots, where you're going to be making, if you're going to be attacking with more guys on the wheel turn than they. Oh yeah, because
it's the entire turn.
Right. So they lose. Let's just assume you play on a guy that has at least 2 defense. Well, I guess it doesn't matter either way. So with the new ruling,
yeah.
So. Like, every guy you have that can attack, it's an incremental +2. Yep. So if you have 2 guys that can attack, this is essentially a 6 damage swing out of 1 card.
Seems good.
Yeah, I mean, even on the surface, 4. So, like, I don't know how this. I mean, I get like it doesn't give you the pierce that Bigger They Are does, but like, I get obviously they can only be played against Decepticons, so it's obviously gonna be meta dependent. But I would definitely run this one of in any Autobot deck. I expect it's going to have more attackers on that wheel turn than one.
It's a green pip too, so even if it's not, oh well, every other deck is purple, then you can just throw one in for. It's a random tech card, and you'll probably get it and be able to close a game out with it as a result.
Well, it also has the period, so like you can just get the +2 attack. Like,
because it's not a dead card in Autobot matchups. It's pretty exciting. I mean, you kind of said it all. I was trying to. It was one of those. I'm going to start this sentence, and by the end of it, I'll get there. I'll figure out if there's something else I have to say, but there's nothing else to add.
It's like how card decks get the prowl effect goal, like on the last turn. That's the goal.
Mm-hmm.
It's like getting that, like in a card. So that's what I really like about it.
Makes sense. Rest and relaxation. I assume we're not going to have a whole lot of words about this one. Repair 1 from one of your guys for a green pip.
Yeah, no. Move on.
The only cool thing is it has Skybite reciting poetry on it.
There you go.
Now, Security Console is something that I know you've been anxiously awaiting for the aforementioned Starscream decks, where you get your defensive plan. Is this good enough for you because I don't think we got another defensive plan.
Plan 6? That's a plan.
Well, yes? Question mark? I guess.
So this is the most important card in the set, right?
This is what?
This is the most important card in the set, right?
Obviously.
Like for the decks. So like for the two decks that won it.
Yes.
Skywarp and Starscream. This is the most important card in the set.
Yep.
And I think any heavy blue deck is going to want to play this as well. Over like whatever other utility they were playing. Just to put your security checkpoints or your piercing blaster or whatever they're called.
Handheld
blasters on top. I mean, it's a data pad. Like this is better than I assumed it was going to be, because you actually draw a card on your opponent's turn and you are able to plan one.
Right.
So again, this is better than I assumed it would be.
So you mentioned blue decks. Do you foresee cutting data pad and say primes for this?
Yeah, this is better.
I can see that.
This is really good. Like this is our like. This is, I don't want to rank things yet, but like this, in the decks that won it, this is by far the most important card. Like this is the most important card in the Starscream decks. This is the most important card in Skywarp decks. I mean, this makes them head and shoulders better than they were before this card existed.
Yeah. And you're saying that you believe, I mean, you'd mentioned blue decks, but you definitely foresee it showing up in other places as well. Because I think it's an important distinction to make, just that the decks that need it, not just want it, like I don't think the Starscream or Skywarp decks work without this existing.
The Skywarp deck doesn't. The Starscream deck still would, because its stats are still good enough, but this is certainly like, this puts it firmly as a tier 1 deck in my opinion.
Right.
It's treasure huntable. It's something you want to like. It'll and the best thing about those decks is Swindled, in my opinion, because it gives you, like, at worst, and this is again from the article, but at worst, it's a new designs. Swindled, like even if you start the turn with two upgrades in your hand, it's at worst improves your hand and gives you a designs. Let alone like digging for what you may not already have. So if you have 2 upgrades in your hand and Swindled, and assuming another card, because I know you lose card advantage. Well, no, you wouldn't actually. If you have 3 cards in hand, you draw 2, discard 2. You can discard the same 2. You'd be able to play both upgrades. It's just the new designs.
Right.
If you have more than 3 cards in your hand at the start of turn, Swindle +2 plus something else, you're improving your hand and getting a new design. So, like, this being a utility that's not like this is why you want Swindled and cards like that, because you want to play this and another upgrade on the same turn.
Right.
And yeah, this card is really, really good.
Yeah.
The fact that like you can just draw a card on defense without putting a card back on top, if your hand isn't good. Like, just card draw on your opponent's turn. You're like, this is almost.
Well, come on, Scott. You were just telling us with pep talk that card draw isn't that important, or card advantage isn't that important.
This gives you things to do with the cards, though.
And that's what I'm getting at. So can you not to belabor the point, but elaborate a little bit for everybody listening as to why it matters here that you're drawing it when you're just playing pep talk doesn't matter.
Because this allows you to put one of those. This gives you something to do with the cards you draw. Right. And it's built into the card itself. So the draw and the plan are all on the same card defensively. Your opponent's not going to be deterred from attacking your guy that has this on it. You're going to allow them to draw a card. Like that's happened in other situations where like, oh, they have some kind of positive effect on them when they get attacked. I don't want to attack them. Like, that's not going to happen. Like, you're going to put this on your high value targets, try to keep them alive. They have no choice but to attack them. And in the deck, like I said, in the decks that definitely want it, it's by far the best card. Of course. But even if you draw something that isn't going to help you, let's just say you have no cards in hand for whatever reason, like it still allows you to do something, which is draw a card. But if you draw like a blank or something like that, you don't want to put it on top. It digs further for better defense also, because you can just draw the card and not put anything on top, and then flip a different card. Yep. So at worst, it's also like an aerial recon on defense. Yeah. So, like, what doesn't this card do that you would want it to do? Yeah, that's my question.
I guess the only other thing I can add, and we'll move on quickly, is it's one of the few cards that lets you do something on your opponent's turn, and that should stand out to you. Not you specifically, Scott, but anybody out there that's listening or watching, that we have very few effects that allow you to do that. And this is a pretty solid one. It's not just I get to look at my opponent's hand or something that is not totally meaningless, but mostly meaningless. Like, setting up your defense is obviously going to be super important. Yeah. So that's the only thing I wanted to add to it. Moving on from there, we see more Shockwave-centric support, or at least I think it's going to be Shockwave-centric support, and that's Sonic Scramble. It's a green pip. Your opponent chooses and discards a card. You could hypothetically play 3 of them and then draw 3.
Don't care. By the time you set this up, your opponent has no cards in hand anymore.
No, the only way... I can't have a hard time imagining that you set this up and actually achieve it, and it matters. I agree. Yeah. I mean, I could certainly see it being you play 1, they discard. Play 2, they might discard. Play 3, they have no cards left, then you draw 3. And I don't know if spending all the energy to get all 3 was worth it. We don't have a treasure hunt for abilities to go find these. Right. Maybe if it had a combat pip, but obviously Shockwave is at least going to look at it, just because it's another discard effect. Maybe. But I'm not sure it'll even make the cut there, to be perfectly honest. We'll have to say. Spare parts is a green-white. If an opponent's card would cause a weapon or armor to be scrapped from the upgraded character, scrap this card instead.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. I could have just played another important thing instead. Right. Exactly. So this one we do have something to say about, not to gloss over the other ones, but Sparring Gear is an orange-green reinforced plating. I've said offline, Scott, I think you've said it, I think just about everybody we've talked to has had builds where I just wish I had more reinforced platings. Do you still feel that way? Do you think this one's going to make the cut?
Oh yeah, this part's good.
Now, do you foresee... I've been waffling on all of the lists that I'm tentatively proxying up, whether it's 3-plating 3 of these, 3-plating 2 of these, or some other combination. Do you see this wholesale replacing plating, or how do you see it shaping up?
We're talking in decks that can only run plating and not run body armor and not run the new.
Of course, because if you have access to body armor, I mean, you're probably, doing something to set up body armor.
And we're talking about decks not using Windblade.
Well, again, Windblade gets a special exception for a lot of stuff.
So assuming you can only run plate, you can't run body armor, you're not Windblade, and you can't run the new one because you're not a tank deck or something like that, then I still think plating is better because you're probably going to be a blue-based deck that's going to want to run plating anyway.
Right.
So I still think you want 3 plating first and probably 2 of these. Is probably...
Uh-oh, I'm losing you there. Say that one more time.
Because ultimately... You there?
Yeah, I got you.
Okay. Ultimately, it is still orange.
Right.
So, like, it's going to be worse than plating. So I think 3-2 is the right ratio.
I think that's where a lot of mine are falling, or at least I'm willing to shave that copy because, well, it has a green pip, so you can go find it. This one I am looking forward to because, as I said, there were a bunch of Wave 1 decks where I said, every time I find reinforced plating, this thing is smooth as butter. Every time that it doesn't see reinforced plating, it's, just set all the cards on fire because the whole thing falls apart. This definitely is obviously going to shore up those sort of things. So,
right, that's how I see it.
So, Steamroll is our next one up. How do you feel about turning other people into Grimlock? Uh-oh. I don't know if I lost him, folks.
No, I'm back.
Okay.
I'm back.
Because I could hear noises, but then I heard no talking. I'm like, I don't quite understand what's happening. So, yeah. Steamroll, pseudo Grimlock. How do you feel about that?
Are we assuming the rule is Grimlock can't do this twice, right?
I can't imagine that that's how it would work, but I have been wrong before. So, yeah, we'll go with that.
So, at first I really liked this card. And then it came to then I kind of realized that, like, am I ever going to want to, what situations am I going to be in where I actually am going to want this card?
Mm.
And the situation is, I'm getting a big attack with the option to strike at more than one guy, and I'm going to choose the smaller one in order to automatically put damage on the bigger guy, which is exactly the way Grimlock works.
Mm.
It's just it's different than how Grimlock works. So, like, Grimlock doesn't choose to do that; it just happens to work out that way. Like, I've definitely seen that situation against me playing like the 3-wide primes deck. Like, he kills one of the little guys, and then all the damage goes over to some other guy.
Right.
So my armored up characters don't get hurt. It's the only way to hurt my armored up characters because attacking them directly is not going to get that much damage over to them. So that's where I can see where this is going to be powerful. Is that if I can make a singularly gigantic attack against a guy that, like, I'm going to kill anyway, I might as well trample over to somebody else.
Yeah.
So, like, I think this card is probably good enough. I just, right off the bat, I don't know what home it's going to have yet. My
first thoughts with this were more, speaking of decks that wanted multiple reinforced platings, Rare Megatron, the hypothetical Sunstorm combos. Like you said, all the builds that say, this is my guy, he's a one-man army, I'm going to load him up, but you ended up losing the race in Wave 1 because only one guy is really impacting combat. So, okay, I'll one-shot your guy. You've already killed off my other guys, so the remainder of your team gets to tee off on my powered-up Transformer. This lets you kind of catch up, because then you can do the Grimlock thing of, okay, well, I'll potentially wipe out more than one opposing character in a single clip. Or, cripple one of them so that maybe the little guys can do something of value. Since it's a null pip, it does become, is my action for the turn worth it? I don't know if maybe just playing burn would be better, but it is a way for you to break that combat cycle by doing this on one of those gigantic guys.
Yeah, and it allows you to not waste attacks, because you're not overkill.
Exactly. That was another big issue with that of, I have Megatron that has 2 Energon axes and something else on him. Great. Well,
right.
Okay, you just crushed my guy who had 3 health remaining.
Right.
Who cares?
So I can certainly see it seeing play there. That's a really good home for it. I guess any other deck like that, like, you know, I guess any deck that just makes giant attackers would want this,
Right.
you know, that doesn't have ways of like getting around it otherwise.
But like I said, it comes back to, and it's going to take time to evaluate it, but I don't know if it's, you could just one shall stand instead. And yes, the damage is spilling over, but it matters how much damage is typically spilling over when you're doing it. Whether the 3 damage or, you know, playing whatever else in that slot would have mattered more.
Yeah, I need to test it, but I think this card is good enough. I think the ability is definitely good enough, and I think you just need to find a powerful home, and I think it's fine.
Right. Yeah, I can agree with you on that one. So we'll move on from Steamroll to Tackle, which is something that it feels powerful because tapping, again, kind of like defensive effects or effects on your opponent's turn, tapping opposing guys is very rare. One of my thoughts was maybe this helps Dinobots in the Insecticon matchup because then you can steal some of their flips by tapping down their guys and decreasing the number of turns before you wheel. But I don't know if that's enough to do it. Since it's an orange pip, maybe it's, you know, it'll be okay. I don't know. Are you looking forward to sleeving this one up, or does Tackle not even, you don't care about it?
What situation are you going to be tapping a guy that's going to be worse than theirs at the same star cost? Yeah,
the only time that, so using the Dinobot scenario, if you were to swing him with Sludge first, and then Swoop or Snarl or the not Grimlock one, tap somebody.
Because it has to be melee.
Right. So you Snarl down, say, Barrage, or Snarl down,
right,
Kickback, yep. You know, whatever the best option is at the moment, assuming things play out normally. So you get him with Grimlock. Hypothetically, then you get your second attack with Grimlock, which is pretty important, but I don't know if that's good enough. You know, it was one of those idle thoughts that I had, and I haven't really mapped out whether that does enough. It doesn't feel like it right now.
I just don't know if there's melee utility characters right now. I haven't studied it enough to think about it yet.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess that's what depends. Like, if there are, then we're good enough.
But like you said, since it has to be the same or fewer stars, you're probably going to have to expend your 7-star guy for their 7-star guy, or 8 or 9 for their 7, and is that really what you want to do? Like, you could instead just attack. Yeah.
It could be. I mean, if they're planning on, like, turning off a kickback attack is always going to be powerful, so I guess I'll give you that.
Yeah.
No matter what. So I guess, yeah. I guess I could see more play than I thought. Like, I haven't studied how many melee guys I'm going to want to use this on yet.
Yeah. It's one of those oddball things. The effect feels powerful, but this may be one where there's too many hoops to jump through until, but the jury's still out at this stage.
I mean, I also feel like Insecticons want this card as well, maybe for like tapping down Flame Wars and things like that to make them vulnerable.
That's possible.
Bring them into combat, like, you know, things like that.
Yeah, bring them into combat earlier, certainly. Yeah, that's not.
If Ransack is melee, right? Like in one of the modes.
He should be. I don't have my handy dandy companion app open at the moment, but I'm pretty sure he is. I think he's melee in alt mode and then ranged in bot mode, if I remember correctly. So
if that's the case, that's what you want,
right?
Like, I can see situations like that, maybe.
Yeah, that's a good point. Oh god.
No, it's better than I think I gave it credit for originally, right, based on some of these scenarios.
So moving from there, we have Testify, which you had brought up earlier. It's each player draws 2. It's orange. Shockwave is probably excited by this. Is anybody else excited by this?
No, I don't understand. Like, this should allow you to play an ability or an upgrade from your hand or something like that. Like, I don't get why this card exists. other than combo decks. I don't understand why this card exists.
Yeah,
Shockwave.
it's Shockwave. Yeah. I mean, all the things that we talked about with Pep Talk is also here, but you're giving
this is way worse. No, this is way worse.
You're also giving your opponent cards. So unless you have a real good reason, I'm not real thrilled about Testify. One of the last ones we're looking at is Universal Network Access, which is, again, it's even blue, so it's an Ancestral Recall, but it requires a star. Do you anticipate you're going to run this over Leap of Faith?
Probably not, but this is probably the second best one for control decks, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
I would play this over the double blue. Likely, again, I haven't run the math yet. I mean, obviously this card's good. Again, because 3 cards to me is worth the action because it sets you up for so many more turns,
right?
And digs you so much deeper. I'm not going to run a 24-star deck just to run this, and I'd probably want to run like a single Leap of Faith over a single one of these.
Right.
But I mean, this is clearly like the second best one, like esoterically.
Right.
Like if I had to run just, this would be the second one next to Leap.
Yeah, Leap set the bar so high that it's tough to look at any of the other star cards and go, yep, I definitely want this thing over being able to play 3 cards in a turn kind of thing.
Yeah, again, bombshell.
Yeah.
If I would have known this card existed or whatever. So, that type of thing.
There is that. That list seems to grow a lot, basically, as we go through everything.
Yep.
So, one of the last cards, I know I just said that, is Vaporize, which is our blue ramming speed. I was coming around on Smelt, and then we saw this one.
Yeah, I said the same thing. I guess when we make a list, this will clearly be in the top whatever. I mean, like, I don't think this card is necessary to have seen print, but I don't make the cards.
I'm surprised it did, to be honest. It felt like, and I have nothing to go on, but it felt like, oh, well, orange gets ramming speed. And, they get that effect where it's just pop anything, and then blue gets whatever. It just felt weird that it's so symmetrical. I don't know why. It just seemed like that wasn't going to be a thing.
Yeah, this card's obviously great.
Yeah.
I dissed on ramming speed early and was proven wrong as to how needed it was against armor. This will be the exact same thing. Like, I guess it will come down to whether or not blue decks will run this or draw arms. To be honest with you, draw arms is still searchable with. I mean, it's definitely searchable with Treasure Hunt, but it's also technically searchable with any draw effect that allows you to then play it.
Yep.
But again, like I run 1 speed on my blue decks now to take care of like certain weapons and things like that that are powerful. So I would certainly run this over ramming speed in blue decks. Obviously.
Right. Before we move on to characters, to the drill arms point, do you foresee the uptick in opposing I was going to say opposing upgrades, but that's not quite where I was going with it. Opposing utilities / weapons influencing that decision, or do you still think that it's primarily C armor, pop armor, and that's the only thing you care about?
I still think it's the only thing you care about most of the time. But again, there are certain exceptions to like control decks that want to like actually fear Pierce and things like that. I think that where the game drags out, that the opposing weapons might be more important at certain times.
Gotcha. Makes sense. So that actually concludes, if you saw me skipping around, the action section, we'll call it that. And we have a handful of characters to go over with everybody to make the marathon as marathon-y as it can possibly be. So I'm going to shift this over in the overlay real quick. So first one up is the new Bumblebee. So it's now... So we had the Megatron that we talked about way back when, and then also brought it up in the beginning of this show. Now we have the action half of it, which initially had me more excited, playing the actions versus playing upgrades. But one thing I want to call out is it feels weird that it was Bumblebee Megatron as opposed to Bumblebee Prime or Starscream Bumblebee, you know, like two characters that were on the same tier. It feels weird thematically that it's them, but, you know, it is what it is. Notably, he's a leader in both modes. He's obviously a car, but he's melee in alt mode and ranged in bot mode. I'm assuming you're pretty excited about this guy. You love the Megatron. Is there any reason you feel that the action version is not as good?
No, I feel like the action version is better. But,
that's not to put words in your mouth there.
Start your engines as a car, right? I mean,
yeah, that is a thing. So I guess that opens the obvious question of this guy replaces Super Rare Bumblebee.
In my opinion, yes.
I
think you can make that deck so consistent it's unreal to just do whatever you want every single turn, given him and given confidence and things like that. I just think that you can do exactly what you want every single turn.
Oh, shout out to Chad. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Scott. Shout out to Chad, who's came in because of the delay on what we're saying versus chat. Basically, and I apologize, I have no idea how to say your name. They're saying, considering how strong certain utilities and weapons are in Wave 2, I do see blue decks running Vaporize over Drill Arms. And yes, that was kind of what I was saying. I could definitely see it happening. It's going to take some time to evaluate it, and I think that's what Scott was saying as well, because most of the time the armor is what you want to pop, and even the utilities, yes, you want to hit that one for the Starscream decks. Security, whatever, it's escaping me right now. We just talked about it like 5 minutes ago. But say it's a field communicator. They already did their thing. It's going to depend how many need to sit and play and actually do see play. Obviously, early on, you're going to see a lot of weird stuff, but eventually it'll distill down to what you're going to see most commonly. So, but I do agree with you guys.
It's the searchable nature of Drill Arms that makes it really good.
That exactly, yeah. If Vaporize was somehow an equipment, obviously we've never had that discussion. It would just that would be the one. Or if we ever see a treasure hunt for abilities, which I kind of doubt we will, but maybe, then it changes the discussion entirely as well.
Right.
But not to sidetrack everything. So back on Bumblebee. Obviously, Cars is excited. Do you see this guy spawning his own lists as a result of this?
No, because Mirage could already spawn those lists. So, like, if you want to do some kind of funky thing like that, you always have Mirage to do it.
Well, but he does have... I mean, he costs an extra star. He has, I think, better stats in both modes. And he also has a relevant... yes, Mirage's ability is good, but I don't think I've ever triggered it.
No, I'm just saying, the play extra action is solid. I don't think that. I guess if you need a random 10-star, he's still really good.
Yep.
I just think in card decks he's extremely good.
Yes, he's So we are getting legacy tribal support, which is awesome. I mean, we were going to get more cards, but yeah, this looks like it's going to slot in rather nicely into those lists.
And he has 6 attack in bot mode, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's 6-14-1 and 5-14-2. So
those are massive stats.
Yeah, it's a little unfortunate that he has the lower defense in bot mode where you want to attack with that one, but it's with 14 health, it's still kind of okay. You know, whatever. I'll start your engines, get to play another action, and then just go nuts on the turn that I'm setting up for because you drew me cards.
But he gets around the positive of the other Bumblebee being able to attack wherever he wants. By being able to play an extra action, you can just play a direct damage card, and then that is the equivalent of being able to attack probably where you. It's not as good to attack where you'd want, especially if he's suited up. But it's as good to get and to have this effect the rest of the game of a card advantage engine, as well as just on demand play extra actions, and the other combination with Wheeljack that allows you to play to dig deeper and start your engines and things like that. This is just really good in my opinion. Yeah, I'm pretty excited to sleeve this guy up. It's also for everybody out there that was upset about there being rare combiners and things like that. This guy's a common, and he's
seeming like he's going to replace the super rare from the previous set. So, rip everybody who was trying to get rid of those super rares as quick as they could, I guess. One of the other characters we got, it was the very last reveal, was RotC, who he's
no star. Who cares?
Yeah, he's just kind of
evil beachcomber. Don't even know who he is.
Yeah, I feel like he should have been a truck, but I guess he's not, because like you said, I'm pretty sure now that I have my desk in a new area, I can actually look at my collection. I'm pretty sure I have this guy somewhere. But anyway, yeah, 3 defense in alt mode. That's a thing, I guess.
He costs like $1 billion, right?
Yeah, he costs 11 stars. I mean, he has 7 attack in bot mode, but yeah, whatever. I don't have a whole lot to say on him. I have about as much to say about him as the text.
He's not Blitzwing, right? He's not Blitzwing,
right? That's the most apt way to put it. For the same cost, you could have had a Blitzwing.
Exactly.
Now, Skywarp, you might have more positive things to say about Scott. He's a plane, he's a specialist, and he has kind of the Starscream thing, but this time for blank Battle Pip cards.
Yeah, I don't care that he's a plane.
I'm going to get you to say you like planes. I'm getting you to like planes.
If it's not an aerial bot, I don't care that it's a plane.
Yeah.
This guy's awesome. So all you have to do is play when you're attacking. All you have to do is play a colorless card, and he gets the +3 attack. So he's a 6 when attacking. All you have to do is flip a colorless to give him essentially +3 defense. I mean, so again, if we didn't have the defensive data pad, I would have to figure out like how many cards I was actually like how many blanks could you actually run where
your regular combats were terrible
on the other characters. Yeah, where it becomes a burden on the other characters. But that is now out the window.
Yep.
With the defensive data pad. So, yeah, this guy is obviously a deck archetype onto himself. I actually wish I could run it with the Starscream, but I just don't want to run a 2-character 23-star list.
Right.
So
then you run 2 Leap of Faiths.
You could. I'm not big. I'm no longer big on 2-character lists. Like just seeing the advantage that the 3-character lists have had with me recently.
Right.
But
I think that'll ebb and flow over time.
Yeah, I mean, but I definitely have a home for this guy, and it involves at least 7 colorless cards. I mean, anytime that this is the other character that can also flip to alt mode and get a card back from your scrap pile, it doesn't cost 13.
Yes, that is also of note, which is pretty cool. And considering most of those will be burn spells, like that's pretty significant.
Yeah, I mean, this guy's like so above the curve, I can't even fathom. Granted, he has like obviously poor defense, obviously like poor base attack, but does that even matter? Like, who cares?
Well, I obviously having not run the numbers, and they would probably be wrong, and I'd have to double check them with Scott anyway. I don't know what the odds are, especially given the aerial recon, which may or may not be running a few copies, the defensive plan card, whether he'll hit 3 swings into him, or whether that even matters. So if you whiff, you're taking a significant chunk of damage in bot mode because you have 0 defense, presumably.
Well, you're probably gonna have tough 2 also. We agree, right? I mean, this is where your certain number of reinforced platings come into play as well.
Exactly. So it's going to depend on, and that's one of the questions in my mind, and not is this guy playable at all? Because I agree with you. I think he defines a deck himself in one way, shape, or form or another. I just don't know whether it matters if he whiffs twice defensively. Will he get to that 3rd attack, or does it matter if he does? Because on the offensive side, you were just playing the cards anyway, kind of thing.
He's what, 10 hit points?
13.
Oh.
Yeah, 3, 13, 0.
In both modes?
Yeah, both modes. That is wild to me. I mean, it's not the first one we've seen, but being a specialist is important, as we've seen for a number of other cards.
So him being a specialist is not as important because he wants the defensive plan card over field communicator being permanently on him, but obviously you can just play field communicator and then immediately just get rid of it.
Yeah.
To the other card.
It's kind of you're playing it to. I mean, assuming you have no other specialist, you can just use it simply to dig for that thing, or power him up. Oh, it's a plasma burst off the top. Zap that guy, or shock that guy. Get in there.
Yeah, I wish he was ranged for mark. I mean, he's on marksmanship, so I wish he was ranged. But
right.
You can definitely run in with characters that are, and then you'll just have all the direct damage. It's good.
I mean, that was something that I mentioned in our review way back when of Wave 1 or going through it. Like, I always wondered if a null pip centric build would be a thing, and I guess, well, we're about to find out.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of this guy.
Yeah.
I just hope that the home I have for him is good enough, but the only issue obviously is if the defensive plan card gets destroyed, and or if for some reason you don't already have armor, you should be running a plethora of it, and you don't have the defensive plan card on him. Obviously, you want him to be your third attacker to allow you to set all that stuff up. But assuming you can do that, this is pretty powerful.
Yeah. Well, like chat was saying earlier, that may be a point in Vaporize's column, or Ramming Speed's column for that matter, simply because they can pop those utilities. And that, like you said, without an armor, he's super vulnerable then. He could just up and croak because of that. If your opponent can't get through it, though, they're probably in a world of hurt, because 13 health with 3 defense is a lot. Like, that's a lot to get through.
And presumably, the armor, as well. Tough 2.
Tough 2, or, times. Whatever the case may be. So, those were the new characters, with the exception of something that would probably spawn a whole lot of other discussions for other reasons. We're going to try and bring those up on a future show, but this one's already been going long, so we don't want to drag it out too much. And that's Omega Supreme. So in order to acquire him, he's not actually going to be in packs. He's going to be in... Well, actually, by the time this goes up, it's already... Well, right now, I think it's too late to already get him through the loot crate. And that's apparently the only way to get this guy.
Not in America.
In America, yes.
In the UK, and I think other locations, he's going to be the... Come to your release event and you'll get one.
Yes. Based on that, I would imagine that there will be other ways. Yeah, sorry, Orangitis. We didn't last very long on Ruckus. Or linger very long on Ruckus. So Omega Supreme, I like this guy. I liked him a lot more when I looked at it I was looking on my phone and I was like, he's only 15 stars? That's spectacular. And then it turned out he wasn't 15 stars. And I'm a little less excited about him, let me tell you.
The hunker down ruling with that tough armor helps this guy a lot.
Yeah.
Because he's a tank and spaceship in alt mode.
Yep. One thing that's come up that I'll oh, go ahead, sorry.
It just depends on whether or not you can... my default is just to run him a Flame War, but how much health does he have? Like 1 million?
24.
That's like 1 million.
Yeah, it's close enough to 1 million.
I don't think he's that good, but I don't think he's that bad like other people think either. Especially, this hunker down rolling is massive for him.
He seems fine. Like, he has a high enough base attack. He obviously is forcing your opponent to spread damage. If you're playing defensively, you may only be taking 2 on each at a turn per attack. If you throw some armor down, you're playing blues already. He has direct damage built into his flip. What I was going to say earlier is a lot of people have been questioning what the P2 means. I don't know if there's going to be some weird set of rules for him or not.
No, it just means promo too. I don't know.
That's what I'm assuming. Yeah, I since they haven't split it up to, like, they didn't have 3 cards for him. It wasn't, the spaceship mode was different from the tank mode. They're just on the alt mode. It feels like it's just simply promo, and that's it. Yeah. Orangitis in chat is saying this card is sort of a wait till cards that support spaceships and guardians come out type to me. I could see that, but at the same time, it's also, you're starting in play with a single guy that has 7 attack, 24 health. Like, maybe there's something there. Like Scott, you were saying, Flame War seems obvious, and then you just throw in Leap of Faith and call it a day. Maybe that's good enough. Or it could fall into the Metroplex category of where it's always kind of lurking on the periphery. There is the threat of this, but right now there just aren't that many worthwhile 6-star characters. There aren't that many full stop, let alone ones that you're really excited to line up with this guy, I don't think. Like, I'm not chomping at the bit to slam down this guy and Demolisher.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't think that, like, a 10 attack plus whatever like action card you're going to play for the turn makes this guy good enough. Like, I just don't think you can. I don't think he can get big enough to matter.
Yeah,
like isn't Optimus still just going to be bigger than this guy like all the time?
I would imagine. Like, yeah, it clearly wants to be grindy, and like you said, the fact that you can hunker down back superior plating is relevant. Whether it's relevant enough is up for debate. I was brought up.
But you have less action phases to get that going. That's the problem. Like, in a 3-character list, it's a lot different than a 2-character list.
Yeah, it was brought up in chat to potentially run Warpath, and yes, you could. I don't know if, kind of to what Scott was saying, that I don't know if you're doing enough with the stars you're spending in that case. You could just simply run Battlefield Legend, have a lot more breathing room for other accessories to stuff in there, and possibly always be bigger than this guy. Obviously outside of hit points, but, you know, you could relatively consistently slam for 10 to 11 with Battlefield Legend. This guy doesn't have that luxury in a lot of cases. You might be tankier, but I don't know if that's enough.
I mean, the Warpath thing, I guess, does kind of help because it gives you confidence, which allows you to inspiring and then, just play confidence and then hunker down.
Yeah.
So to put the armors in your scrapyard and then get them back, I mean, I think that play is better than what I was saying with Flame War.
Yes,
because it gives you confidence. But as long as you have to pull that off, that's the issue.
Yeah. I mean, it is a thing. I know I did order the Loot Crate. I am going to try this guy out just for the sake of it. I don't have any personal attachment to Omega Supreme, other than he was a very annoying boss in War for Cybertron, but that's about it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think if he would have cost different amounts, it would have been too good. Maybe. I don't know. It's really this hunker down rule, like, makes him at all playable. I just think that, like, the 2-character nature of that deck is just going to make it difficult for it to win. But maybe there'll be something eventually that makes it better. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. As I said, I'm going to try him. But it really is, the measuring stick is he better than Battlefield Legend at any point? And if he is, how consistently? Because otherwise it's, okay, well, yes, superior plating is better than body armor. Is the tough 4 going to be that much better than body armor on Prime? And I don't know.
I mean, you also flip and get a damage out of the deal. Also, I mean, again, it's not insignificant. I mean, that ruling certainly helps the deck. Like, don't get me wrong. But,
yeah, yeah. I just don't know if it's still up in the air, but we'll have to see. He isn't immediately jumping out to me as, oh yeah, I'm playing this guy. This is a deck right now, or at least I'm not seeing it immediately, whereas some of the other characters we've talked about are, yeah, this guy is definitely going into this or starting that. Right. This one needs a little more massaging.
Yep.
So, assuming that I didn't miss something because there were a lot of cards released, that should do it at 2 minutes 11 seconds officially, assuming that Twitch is telling me the correct thing. So, Scott, you had mentioned your article that should be going up and should have been up by the time this actually officially airs. No, I haven't got my loot crate there, Dan. I just ordered it. Is there anything else you wanted to plug before we sign off?
So this will go live the week that this will go up on a Monday. Look for interviews we did at the last end of Wave 1 case event that we had at Top Deck Games in Collingswood, New Jersey. So take a look for that interview coverage that we did. We didn't do match coverage. We did a lot of interview coverage. So take a look for that.
Yep. So those, you can find them on both VectorSigma.info. You can find them on VectorSigma.info, the YouTube channel. Obviously, as we move on, finally, as much as I love spoilers, I mentioned to Scott offline that I'm really excited to actually dive into use these cards, whether I have them physically or not, because I'm proxying up a bunch of stuff because I have 1,001 deck lists, and if I don't get them out of my head, it's all I'm thinking about right now. So definitely hit us up with any feedback. I appreciate everybody that was participating in chat. Shout out to everybody that was actually saying stuff. If you're lurking, that's perfectly fine as well. Look for this sometime next week to you guys that are in chat. That kind of does it, unless there's any last second things you wanted to bring up.
No, I guess just our plan for Wave 2 is to videotape and possibly even live some like initial playtesting games that we open once we start opening the product. So right out of the gate, you're going to start seeing new cards to play. I guess the plan for us will be some combination of talking about updates to old decks and new decks that have spawned. We have multiple large constructed events coming up already in March scheduled, so we will have results from them to talk about as well, which I'm assuming most players will run new decks, so there'll be plenty to talk about there if it's not just us doing well and other people, things we might have missed. So there's a lot to come when it comes to talking about like the actual strategies around this stuff.
It looks like, Dan, is that a spoiler you're bringing out there? Live showcase games on Saturday the 2nd? You're going to live stream it from there?
On, Facebook Live or YouTube Live.
Ooh, I didn't realize that he was going to be able to do that, so that's news to me. I've been out of the loop for personal reasons recently, so I'm still catching up, even though we've been running this show. It's some of the ancillary things that everybody else is pitching in about. I've been only recently able to catch on. Shout out to Pregame Sideboard. Thank you for the host. Thank you for everybody that's joining from his channel. I apologize you caught us right at the end, but Scott was just filling us in on a lot of cool stuff that's coming up. Look for us next week. We are obviously still dissecting things. We'll be talking more about our general thoughts on the next show, and then a couple other things that we'll go from there.
Yep.
Oh, that live stream is going to be from inside Mark's house itself. That should be exciting.
Yes.
So
yes,
I apologize. I said that wrong. All right, everybody. I've been rambling enough. I've been keeping Scott long enough. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And everybody tune in next time for more Random's Thoughts.